Hey, we're doing notes for section 2.6. If you're lucky, you have a handout for this because there's kind of a lot of writing with some word problems and setting up some proportions. So if you have that handout, get it out. And it's not complete, it has the problems written down, but you're going to have to do the work with it. So writing ratios and proportions is the topic. Ratios first and then proportions. And what is a ratio? It's division, basically. It compares two quantities, so two values. But as division, you can set it up in three different ways that you could display a ratio. The most common being the fraction, but one way is to just put it in words, A to B, or like it could be numbers 2 to 3, 7 to 9. You can write it with a colon, A to B like this, or as a fraction, A to B. A over B, but you still say A to B. There's 2 boys for every 3 girls in this class. There are $5 for every 10 whatever. Regardless of which way you write it, you always will reduce it. So you couldn't have an answer of like 10 to 12. You would have to change your 10 to 12 down to 5 to 6. So always reduce, whether no matter which method you use to write the ratio, you still have to shut her down, reduce it as far as you can go. So we're going to practice writing a ratio. If you don't have a handout, you're going to have to pause the video and write this down. A volleyball team plays 14 home matches and 10 away matches. First, they're going to ask us to find the ratio of home matches to away matches. So the home ones is 14 to away matches, which is 10, but as I said, no matter what method you use to write this, you have to reduce it. These are both even numbers, which means they're both divisible by 2. The ratio would be 7 to 5. Divide them both by 2. I could do 7 to 5 this way, or I could write it as 7 to 5. You're not expected to pick one or the other unless it actually says that you have to. Next one says find the ratio of home matches to all matches. So now we got to go find that home number, which is 14, but then we have to do a little bit of work on our own, and then it says to all matches. There were 14 of them home. If there were 10 away, that means all together there were 10 plus 14 or 24 total matches. So we're going to say 14 to 24. 14 and 24 are both even numbers, so we're going to take those even numbers, reduce them. You're going to get 7 to 12. So for every 12 matches they had, 7 of them are home. Very important when we answer these. If it says home to away, you have to write the home number first. Home, then away. Reduce. For every 7 home, there's 5 away. Same thing here. It said home matches to all matches. There were 14 home. There were 24 total for all of the matches. It says for every 7 there's home, there's 12 of them all together. You have to put it in order for it to be correct, to be counted as correct. So be careful on that. It's not meant to be a trick question, but every time I throw out a daily quiz and it'll say this, and you'll write it backwards and not pay attention to the order given. That's enough about ratios. Now we're going to do proportions. An equation that states that 2 ratios are equivalent. A proportion is an equation that states that 2 ratios are equivalent. So we're going to set these up always as fractions, not as colons or writing the word 2. So here's a ratio, here's a ratio, here's an equation, it makes it equals, says that ratio equals this ratio. For example, here would be a proportion. For every 2 girls, there's 3 boys. That doesn't mean there's only 5 kids in the class. It means it could be any proportion of that. In this case, there happens to be 60 girls and 90 boys. Those are equal because it goes girls, boys, girls, boys. It's important that they stay in order. And if you took 60 over 90 and divided both of those by 30, 60 divided by 30 is 2. 90 divided by 30 is 3. If you reduced it, they would be equal ratios. So there would be an example of a proportion. We're going to work proportions with equations where we know 3 numbers, we don't know the 4th number. How are we going to solve it if we don't know that 4th number? So solving proportions, there's a reason why this comes directly after solving equations, because we're going to take our proportion, we're going to cross multiply, and the very first step that we're going to have is going to be an equation. So other than that it's set up to begin as a proportion, the rest of it is all going to be an equation, which is what we just got done doing. So it doesn't look like an equation right now, but that's where we'll go with this. 11 over 6 equals x over 30. We will always solve by cross multiply. There's more than one way to do it. Write this down. Cross multiply with an equals between. Cross multiply with an equals between. There's more than one way to do it. Some of you can do them in your head only when this is a whole number. It doesn't work to do them in your head if that comes out as a fraction. It doesn't work if this is a 6 and this is a 29. Okay, so you can't, I can't allow you right now to look at that and just be like, oh, it's easy, it's 55. 6 times 5 is 30, 11 times 5 is 55. I know that that works, but it only works sometimes, you guys. So I don't want you to get stuck where you can do that one in your head, but then 3 problems later, you can no longer do them in your head. So I'm going to show you the steps through it first, and they will start out easy. You cross multiply. Doesn't matter which direction you go first. In this case, I went 6 times x, which is 6x. It says put an equals in between, which there already is, and then I cross multiply that way and get 330. So after the cross multiplying with these type of proportions, all it is a one-step solving equation. We got good at solving one step. One-step solving, just divide by 6 on both of them, and you get x equals 55. Again, because it starts out with an equals, it has a variable, you have an equation. If you put 55 for an answer, it's going to mark it wrong. If you put 55 over 30 for an answer, it's going to mark it wrong. Your answer is x equals 55 because x is what we are looking for. Okay, just for fun, if I would have done it in the other direction and went this way first, you would have got 330 equals 6x, but your next step still would have been to divide by 6. The only difference is it would have said 55 equals x instead of x equals 55. No biggie, it works both ways. So don't get caught up on which one do you do first. Just pick one. Okay, we'll do this one together, and then I'll give you one to try on your own. I'm going to go this way this time and go 7w equals in between. 35 times 4 is 140. Divide by 7 on both sides, and w equals 20. Can you check your answer on these? You betcha. You guys know me well enough. I show you how to check your answers all the time. Do all of you do it? No, because if you all did it, you'd have perfect scores on your tests and on your daily quizzes. I got an answer of 20. I want to make sure that 20 over 35 is the same as 4/7. So I'm going to do 20 fraction 35. There's my 20 fraction 35 with a glare. Try to get it that way. I don't know where I can put it. Anyway, and then when I hit equals, it says 4/7. If you reduce it and it equals the same as the other side, you know you did it right. Okay, one more. Go ahead and do this one on your own. Try it, pause it, come back. All right, hopefully you've got some work to show. You're back. 2m equals 108. Divide by 2, and m equals 54. And I get it, I know. I can just picture those of you that are sitting there being like, can't I just take 2 times 6 is 12 and 9 times 6 is 54? Yes, you can. If that's all you were going to do for the rest of your life is do one-step proportions that come out to be perfect whole numbers, no decimals, no fractions. Be careful on that. So, of course, I'm going to throw a one at you that you can't do it that way. Because now you have to know, why can you do it that way? Cross multiply, you get 9z equals 20. There is no number that when you multiply it times 9, it becomes a 20. Well, there is, but it's not a whole number. Okay, so you're going to divide by 9. If you can reduce it, you reduce it. If you can't, leave it alone. Don't touch it. 20 over 9. 20 over 9 does not reduce. One's an even number. One is divisible by 3, the other one is not. If you're not sure, try it on your calculator. Put 20 over 9. It'll probably give you a mixed number. Yep, 2 2/9. Okay, hit second fraction equals, second fraction equals 20/9. If it gives you 20/9, it can't reduce. So you don't reduce it. That's when you have to show your work for sure. And of course, then we're going to take everything that you just learned and put it into a word problem and see, instead of me just giving you a problem and saying, do the math, there's a real life problem. Like you might actually have a recipe that you want to change. That's real life. A recipe for tomato salsa calls for 30 tomatoes. Okay, get those out of your garden. We're making 12 pints of salsa. And then, of course, we'd need some tortilla chips, and we'd have to add probably some sour cream is my favorite to go with that. But that's not in here. We're not going to make it that complicated. How many tomatoes are needed to make 4 pints of salsa? How many tomatoes are needed to make 4 pints of salsa? 30 tomatoes makes 12 pints. That's a ratio right there. 30, and I'm going to switch and write right-handed because I write numbers. Did you notice that before? I write with my left hand a lot and then my right hand, but if I'm writing words, sometimes I have to switch to my right hand. 30 tomatoes, and 12 pints. They gave you that information. 30 tomatoes makes 12 pints. So we have to finish the proportion, make an equivalent ratio on the other side with the information they gave us. How many tomatoes are needed to make 4 pints? You can't just do 4 pints and T tomatoes. You can't put it wherever you want. You have to follow this pattern. So if we need to know how many tomatoes, I'll actually use X. X tomatoes over 4 pints. If this says tomatoes pints, this has to say tomatoes pints. If you went pints tomatoes, you'd go pints tomatoes. Oh, I already had it written there for us. Okay, we could cross multiply this and get 12x. Of course, I'm not going to put the words in when I cross multiply. Equals 120. Divide by 12 on both sides, and you get x equals 10. But don't answer it as x equals 10. You can't put x equals 10 into the answer because it's a word problem, and we didn't even have an x in the beginning of the problem. We made up the x. Stop putting x equals if the original problem that they gave you didn't have an x in it. It says, how many tomatoes? So your answer is 10 tomatoes. X equals 10 is still just part of the work in the solving equations. You see my or here, or you could actually set up your equation different, and instead of going 30 tomatoes, 12 pints, you could go 30 tomatoes and 12 pints and keep that information on the top of the proportion. But if you go tomatoes here, you would have to go tomatoes here. Tomatoes, tomatoes, pints, pints. Watch what happens when you do this. It still works. When I cross multiply, I get 12x. Put it equals in between. Oh my goodness. You get the exact same equation. As long as you go tomatoes, tomatoes, pints, pints. 30 and the 12 have to go together because they were in the same recipe. X and 4 go on the bottom because they're in the recipe you're looking for. So it's not wrong to do it a different way unless you really screw up the order that you put things in. And again, when you're done, make sure it makes sense. Does it make sense that you would need 10 tomatoes? Yeah, because you had 12 pints of salsa and now you only have 4. Cut that recipe up. One last word problem for you. The elevator that takes passengers from the lobby of the John Hancock Center in Chicago, very, very tall building, to the observation level travels 150 feet in 5 seconds. I can stop right there. I have enough information to make a proportion. Not a proportion. I have enough information to make a ratio. 150 feet in 5 seconds. And notice I labeled it so that I know what order I have to do my other proportion in. 150 feet in 5 seconds. The observation level is located on the 94th floor at 1029 feet above the ground. Careful, don't do this. 94th floor at 1029 feet. How is that even related? Don't you dare put an equal sign in between there. Feet, seconds, floor, feet. When you see a number, don't just throw it down. It has to match. We need feet right here. What's the feet? 1029. What's the 94th floor there for? Just to see if you're paying attention. Wake you up. Don't use 94th floor. It's a number, but it doesn't mean anything in this proportion. Find the time it takes the elevator to travel from the lobby. So our time that we're looking for is seconds. Seconds, feet per second. We're going to cross multiply and divide. Cross multiply, I'm going to go this way first and get 150x equals, take time, 5 times 5029. Somebody better check that for me. 5, that's, you know what, I tell you to use these for a reason. I better do the same, because why would you do all that work and still get it wrong? 5 times 1029 is 5145. Got it. Divide that by 150. And you get x equals, 5145 divided by 150 equals 34.3 seconds. That is one fast elevator. I swear, I think it takes 30 seconds sometimes in a hotel and you're only going up 2 floors. This one went up 94 floors and it only took 34 seconds. You are flying up to the observation level. Anybody ever been to the observation level? They put a glass floor out like a patio or like a deck, and it's all glass, and you can go walk out there like you're walking over the top of the whole city. It's crazy amazing. It's hard. It's hard to walk out there and be scared. But anyway, ratios and proportions. Do your assignment. Show the work, even on the easy ones, so you get in develop a nice, smooth, good habit of cross multiply, divide. Because tomorrow, we're going to make much more, or I shouldn't say tomorrow, I should say the next lesson that we do, our equations are going to look a lot more complicated than that. We're going to have 2, 3, and 4 step solving equations. So let's do the proportions right the first day so that it's easier the second day. Good luck.